All right, MG Rob back with you. And today, we're back on the Jeep. All right, so what I did was I picked up a new thermostat gasket. This is just a blank square gasket with a center hole cut in it. That's just a universal cut your own thermostat gasket. So then we just lay the thermostat housing over top, get the center of the hole where it looks like it's pretty centered, line up the best you can, trace around it, cut it out. Mark the holes, and we got this hole punch here. Just punch the holes out. Alright, so after putting a little bit of gasket sealer on here, sticking it to the thermostat housing, we just go ahead and put it on. I think I know now why they had problems here. It looks like the washer here is too big, pushing the thermostat housing just a little off center so the bolts don't quite line up like they should. Which means I'm going to have to loosen this up and change that washer. So this flat washer was way too big, pushing against the thermostat housing, not allowing enough room. The things you have to mess with these old vehicles. It's all part of the game. You never know what someone else before you has done and how much stuff you're going to have to correct while you're in there. So I've already got my second belt here. In a perfect world, it'd be like nice to get matched pairs, but in today's supply chain, that's a little easier said than done anymore. Because you just look at the markings on here, look for ones where the date codes and stuff, all that matches up, and you got ones that were cut from the same batch. So we tighten the belts down. Now I can put the, I gotta tighten this bolt down here that was never tightened, that was never tight before. Of course I got my new upper hose here, which I already cut the one end off of. So we just match this up here. Now we're going to cut it right about here. And I have these hose cutters here, which you can use a razor blade. But that is a little easier. And now I have an upper hose. So at this point I just got to put the fan back on. And we got to put the radiator back in place and the fan shroud at the same time. And radiator hoses. Now I searched and searched and searched to try to find something better for a lower radiator hose than this. But I was not able to come up with anything. It appears that this aftermarket radiator here has an 1 3/4 outlet rather than an 1.5 inches, which is what the factory hose would have had. And after going through all the hoses at the parts store and going through everything that's in the computer and looking at everything that has 1 3/4 at one end and 1.5 inches on the other, I could not find anything that would fit. Everything curved the wrong direction, or had the bigger end on the wrong end. nothing would fit. And the aftermarket universal hoses that was in stock wouldn't hold their shape like this one would with the inner metal windings. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this back on it. I hate to, but that's my choice right now. So now that the radiator shroud is put in place, and I bolted the core support in, or tightened the bolts, ready to put hoses on. Now normally I would go ahead and put all new radiator hoses on, but in this case these are actually decent clamps. And I don't have any here right now that's the size I need them to be. I'm so used to just having clamps around for everything and never having to buy them at the store that I just didn't even think about buying them. But these clamps are just a little larger than the ones I'm used to putting on most of the cars I usually work on. So I don't have any right now. And I can always swap them out later. And one of the things I always like to do is look at what direction you're pointing the clamps to be able to get to them fairly easily with a screwdriver or a nut driver, whichever you prefer to use. So like in case of the bottom one here, I'd either be looking at making it go straight up and down so I can get to it with a screwdriver here, or so I can get to it from underneath. Sometimes you got no real choice as to which way to aim them. You just have to put them which way you can get to them. So now I'm ready to top off the coolant and see if it'll stay cool now. In this particular hose, there is a certain amount of bending you can do and it'll hold its shape. So make sure it's not rubbing on anything so it wouldn't rub through as you're using it. All right, I topped up the radiator with coolant, and evidently this is one of those vehicles that has to be burped. Can trap air, whatever you want to say, because it didn't take nearly as much coolant to top it off as what I took out, which means we got to work the air out of it. It doesn't just naturally do it on this one like it does on some vehicles. After getting a bunch of air burped out of it and topping it off, right at the moment it's sitting there holding 190 on the gauge, which is still a little higher than I'd like to see this one, but a lot better than what it was. But also I don't know how accurate the gauge actually is. So I need to go get my infrared thermometer and check it that way against the gauge and see what we got. Well, this isn't exactly the most high dollar unit, so it's probably not super accurate, but it's pretty decent. Now checking it right here, right where the temperature probe is, I'm showing that it's sitting at 172, while the gauge right now is saying, has crept up to 195. So that means the gauge is off. So this thing wasn't overheating as bad as I originally thought, which I never actually checked it with this like I should have, but it was getting hot too quickly. It would get there really fast. So now I just gotta go and drive it around the yard, up down the driveway, and see what she does. Currently the gauge is showing about 185, and on my thermometer I'm showing it's about 170. I did find out I gotta be very careful how hard I push on the throttle, because if you push just a little too far, it cams over and locks into full throttle position within the linkages. But the temperature staying rock solid, not moving at all. And other than having to go through the carburetor to get it actually cleaned out properly and working like it's supposed to, the next project will be the brakes. Because you got zero pedal feel. Feels like the pedal doesn't move at all, but it does stop. So, this is MG Rob. Later.